Hey, Facebook, I know it's an early morning here in the United States, but we have someone live with Radhika.
Hi, Janet. I found you on YouTube and it was amazing seeing your videos. Your work is really unique. I loved it. And congratulations on your TED Talk as well. I look forward to seeing you there. Okay, so let's begin. So, how is touch important? Uh, what would you say about the importance of touch? Because people in India really don't know much about you or your work. So I guess a little introduction about your work and touch.
Sure. So basically, I provide consensual touch opportunities for my clients. Again, it can be as simple as just like I've literally had a session where all we did was like touch pinkies, basically, all the way up to a full body, kind of all the limbs or all the parts that are possibly able to be touched. Like I've had all of that. So touch is very, I don't know how to describe it. It's such diversity. There's a lot of diversity around touch. And I guess your question is like, why is touch important? And it is like the skin has all these nerve endings and they have the power to support our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system, right? So the nervous system is completely connected to the skin and to contact and the sense that gives us information constantly. So if somebody touches us aggressively, our body reacts and knows, I got to get out of here, right? Or I got to fight. And so we gain a lot of information from touch. And also, touch can be the thing that can relax the nervous system and to create peace, and it relaxes our heart rate. And so when we receive the touch that's like deeply nurturing and caring and loving, we get information that we can rest and we can turn off that fight or flight, and we can really bring health into our bodies and bring health into our beings. And I think that's what's needed more than anything in our world right now, such a modern world we have. We're always running in social media and being on our phones. It's constantly accelerated, and our adrenaline is constantly like kicking in because we have to keep going. What touch does, it grounds us and it allows us to just be right here in this moment. That's unique. We don't have a lot of those opportunities. We're told meditate and go to yoga and do all these things to practice that. But some of us, we don't want to do it by ourselves. We really need someone to be with us and to be near us. And that's what touch can do. It can create those meditative and relaxing experiences, but you're with another human being. And I think we, as a society, as a species, we are created to be with each other and not to be isolated and alone.
Broadly speaking, there are two types of problems around touch, apart from the stigma and the non-platonic type, which would be touch deprivation and PTSD. So that would be abuse, molestation, and all those kind of things where it is non-consensual touch. So how would you comfort such clients, and how do you help them to change their outlook towards touch?
Well, first, I'm definitely not about to make anyone do anything or convince anybody of anything. The clients that I've seen that have had really difficult traumatic experiences, they know that they want it. They know that they need it. They just don't know how do I get it in a way that my body's not going to react negatively. Like that I'm not going to go into like what I was saying before, that the sympathetic nervous system, which is so important, that gives us that fight or flight. Like how do I not jump into that? And so as long as this is what they want and they're able to communicate with me in some way, then what I do is I need more information. I need to figure out what is it that they without them having to tell me, because sometimes people will tell you things aren't really true because that's what they think, but that's not really what's happening. And the body knows more than sometimes the mind is willing to do. So I have exercises that I have just been able to gather throughout the years. One of the first things that I do with someone who, again, is touch averse and is like absolutely not touching me, is I have them do an object exercise where I give them random objects and they, with a blindfold, they explore those objects. So they're touching something, but just not a human being. And one of the things I did with the client that I'm remembering right now, her experience of it was like, why is this giving me emotions? Like, why would an object, let's say, I have these pills, why would this here? Why is this creating emotions in me? Why am I having an experience, something that's not real? And that I think is very interesting because it gives me information. If they say, I don't like this, they're, blindfolded. I don't like this. This doesn't feel good. And I'll say, well, tell me more. It's too hard or it makes noise. And so as I get information, I realize, okay, that gives me a structure to work with. That then when I then introduce touch that they are actively participating in. And again, it's very little. I mean, it could be like this. Like this is maybe where we begin when they actually touch another human being. They're actively a part of that. They get to choose that. They get to make that, and like they get to initiate on their side. So it's a lot of me exploring, intuitive, learning about them, figuring out what's right for them, what feels good to them, and starting up very small and building that confidence. Like, okay, that didn't scare me. That was okay. I think I'm okay. And then also creating ahead of time some gauges, like if they start to freak out or like if they start to feel nervous, like I give them a vocabulary on accessing like what they're feeling inside. So we have different, I don't know, some different like materials that they go, okay, let's go to, are you panicking right now? Or can you see the panic line? How do you feel? Are you in your comfort zone? Do you still feel, completely calm? Or are you right now being stretched? So like giving them, again, some new vocabulary that helps them communicate to me what's happening.
Just a minute, let me put on the lighting, please. So let's talk a bit about how cuddling or touch therapy can complement counseling. Counseling is basically recognition and the cognitive understanding of the problem. It cannot give you the actual experience of what you've missed, or it cannot give you a corrective experience. So how would cuddling complement that?
So often therapists might tell somebody, well, after I'm sure, months or years of therapy, they can address that there's touch deprivation, touch aversion. And I mean, therapists can say, I see what your needs are. You really need to gain some skills and some confidence around being with another human being. And a therapist can't do it. And I don't know about in your country, but in this country, there's ethical regulations, and they can't do the touch therapy. I mean, they can maybe hold someone's hand, but beyond that, it's not possible. So what I do and what I love to continue to grow in my practice is having more therapists for my clients too, so I can send my clients to them, and they may be able to send their clients to me. And what we do, it's called the triadic model, where the therapist and I are communicating about a specific client, and we can create if we'd like, or we can, figure out what the client needs, with of course with the client's input, and then create that touch session so that we're kind of the triadic, meaning like we're all working together. Then the session happens and we do the things that we all agreed would be really helpful. And then I send notes back to the therapist. so that when the client goes back to the therapist, they're able to then assess, like, okay, how was that for you? And really what I tell people is that I'm here, okay, well, I'm not here to help you uncover the why, like the why you got to where you are, the why you are who you are, why, you know, why don't you like touch, or why isn't that you never got touch. I'm not here to uncover that information. So that's with the therapist, but I am here to discover how. How do we get touch, or what kind of touch would you like to receive? That's my job. So if someone's like, well, I just don't know why I have this obstacle, I don't know why I'm struggling in this, I'm like, that's your therapist. So go to your therapist, and they will give you, they will begin to unpack that information. But your therapist can't really tell you how to do it or what to do exactly, other than trial and error with me. So that's, I think that's how I define and divide our work. And so when we can work together, it's amazing. We can really collaborate and make an amazing session for a client.
So therapists can act as cuddling as a condition by replacing negative touch experiences with positive ones. So it will speeden up the therapy, as well as the acceptance comes faster with experience, right?
Yes, so that's been, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van de Kolk. And in that book, he discusses, there's like 3 parts to dealing with trauma. Talk therapy, as we've been talking about, possibly the use of pharmaceuticals. And lastly, what you just said is, if someone has a traumatic experience with touch, what they need also is to have a positive experience with touch, right? To replace that negative one. And so that's, yeah, basically that's what's happening here. If you've only experienced violence, or, you know, someone violating your consent, your brain has been wired. I mean, it has done its thing to protect you. And I think our minds are really smart. They are there to protect you from experiencing that terrible thing that happened to you. Unfortunately, every time you experience someone close to you, you react that way. And that isn't what we want, right? So so then, yeah, that's why we begin here with what I call, my work is retouch, which is rehabilitative touch therapy, where we can start with, okay, we need to teach your brain that not all situations are like that one that happened. And let's begin to have you experience the sensations around really positive, consensual, that you're in control of touch. So yeah, that's the method that I think is the newer method that's being used right now. And I think it's having results. And I know that with that book, The Body Keeps the Score, and other therapists that use this model, they haven't, that I know of, no one is doing it the way that I do it. No one is introducing touch and cuddle therapy under that work. I think the recommendations are maybe somatic experiencing, or yoga, or meditation. Like, they have other methods that they've applied, but our work is so new that it's, yeah, like we're still, I think we're still contender. We just have to make it more known and show more results.
Where would a cuddlist fit in the hierarchy of a psychiatrist, psychologist, counselors, occupational therapist, speech therapist, etc.? So what would be your position? Dash cuddlist dash.
Well, I can tell you anecdotal things that my clients have said. I want to say first and foremost that I deeply respect the medical field. I believe it has a really necessary role and purpose. I come from a family of doctors. So my dad is a surgeon, my sister is a pediatrician, and my brother is an oncological surgeon. So I deeply respect all of their education, all the time they've invested in the work that they do, because you know they've worked a lot and they deserve what they get with their MDs. At the same time, my clients have told me, countless times that they will spend years and years and years in therapy and never get to the places where they need to get to. And then with just a few sessions with me, we move through life events, we move through things that like it just speeds right through. Now I can admit that maybe it was those years of therapy that allowed them to have the openness to share with me. At the same time, they'll say, you know, I haven't been able to say this one specific story to my therapist in years. I haven't had that ability. Like I couldn't tell them this really traumatic thing that happened. And I've been wanting to, but I just can't. But with you, with touch, it opened up so easily. And I think that's the power of this, is that a lot of our obstacles, I mean, a lot of our tension is in our body and not here. Like we want to, but it's here. So, well, I realize that while I don't have, I've not put in the years that a medical doctor, a medical professional puts in, and I don't have all that education, I think that if there was a hierarchy, my goodness, I don't know, like, I think we're right up there. I think we collaborate. I think we are equals. And honestly, I'll be real honest. Oh, go ahead.
So what I really meant was a person goes to a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist for a severe problem, and then he's transferred to a counselor when the intensity of the problem reduces. But when you end at counseling, sometimes it's abrupt. We need something more. So in that process of a therapy of a person, where would you place a cuddlist? That was the question.
Well, if it's been diagnosed as that touch is, well, okay, I think touch is valid for all of it. I think touch can be, even if the person doesn't speak to having touch aversion or touch deprivation, I think touch is essential because it's not only about touch, and this is where we haven't discussed this yet. It's about communication. In life, we all need to learn how to ask for what we want and speak up for ourselves and say yes and say no to other people's requests. So I would say it's right up there with, like, go to your counselor. And if the client has seen issues around communication, around self-advocacy, around who they are as a person in the real world, I think it pairs up nicely with that. Now, again, I don't see, right at this time in our society, I don't see medical doctors trusting us. I don't see them, again, it's because we're not an industry to be completely trusted yet. I think we haven't proven ourselves well enough. And I think a lot of practitioners I see, I wouldn't trust them with a client that has a severe chronic issue at this point. So we do need more training. We do need to have it so yes, we have our clinicians, or not clinicians, our practitioners who are prepared and ready to deal with a more intense and severe case. But ideally, once the industry has really kind of gotten to more of an expert level, I think we would be a good match for an introduction to that with that counseling session and to begin that work of collaboration. At this time, again, if I were a medical doctor, I would be reluctant. Unless I knew that practitioner personally, right? Unless I knew and I'd worked with them already, then maybe I'd be more open. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm building relationships and proving that I can do this work effectively for their patients because I want to do no harm. So yeah, I think if it's long term, I think it's really a really important move that we move in that direction. But right now, yeah, we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Should and can cuddlists be employed in schools to help children with ADHD and autism and disruptive childhood disorders?
Say that question again.
Should cuddlists be employed in schools to help children with ADHD and autism and disruptive childhood disorders?
I think there's a place for cuddlists and other certified cuddling professionals to make an effect in I don't know about schools. I would say in families first, and I think parents need to be involved. I think that maybe schools with parents present. I think I see this work more going into those, because I think there are some professionals, cuddling professionals, who really are wanting to work with parents and families and children. And I think it needs to begin at home, because at school, it's there's a lot of potential for harm, unfortunately. And at least in my country over here, we're actually teaching children, do not touch each other. Like it's a constant, like, don't touch. And that, which reinforces a really already bad situation, makes it worse. So I think that the place where if it was in a school, it would be educational for families. Because I think that's where children need to receive their first touch, and the first nurture is learning how to receive it at home. And there's many fathers and mothers that don't know how to touch their own children. And creating that solid foundation there so that they don't need to receive touch outside of home desperately, right? Like they have it at home first.
Would you like to take up programs to train parents, school counselors who sometimes have difficulties touching the children or students? Because what happens with ADHD is that the child cannot sit in one place. He constantly needs to move, he constantly needs to run, he cannot make eye contact. So when a person gets hyper, a student with ADHD gets hyper, it is very difficult to control the person or to calm the child down. And with autism, they do not like to be touched, but they desperately need to be touched. So before our interview, I just spoke to a friend of mine who's a school counselor. So she was very interested in your work. And this question is by her. So she wanted to know, how can she go about this?
So I personally don't have experience with ADHD or autism children. I have experience with the adults that grow from that. And one of the things I have here in my space is I have a weighted blanket. And I think it's like 30 pounds. I mean, it's pretty heavy. And so I find that either the weighted blanket and myself, I will put my weight on my clients, which again, you don't put your weight on a child, but having that ability to be grounded is extremely important. Ability to kind of tell the nervous system it's okay to just like breathe and just come on down. And I could see some benefits of if there could be human touch that would allow for some of that groundedness. But again, we still need more people out there that really have a lot of experience with that and do what I do to kind of come together and figure out something for children. But alas, I don't have that skill set.
It's a new field, so we have to explore it, go about it, do different things, get different people together, work together, and then we can actually broaden the horizons.
Yes.
What would you tell parents out there about touch, how to spend time with your children, what to do, so that it doesn't lead in touch deprivation in the future?
So it's kind of tricky because there's two things. There's like an extreme. We have the parents that are touching their children, but constantly, but doesn't always feel good, right? It's not nurturing. And then we have the parents that don't touch at all. Like there's these two kind of extremes. And so it's like non-consensual touch, but the kid's getting touched, but it's non-consensual. And then or there's like very little touch. So there is two games that there's one I play with my children that I've done this with my YouTube channel, and there's a series of videos with my kids, and the game is called Will You May I. And because again, what we're trying to do here is exploring new types of touch as well as exploring great communication skills. So it's asking first and then learning to say yes or no. I think that's the piece that it's missing in families. I mean, there's a lot of just touch that if it's a nurturing touch, we just do it. Like we don't think, I just go up to my kid and I'll give my kid a hug, and I don't always ask. And so just being mindful of practicing saying, can I give you a hug right now? Right? Or my children will ask me, and I love this. They'll be like, Mom, can I hug you? And I'm like, yeah. Like, so it's practicing modeling the asking, modeling the yes and the no, being okay, just in general, being okay with your child telling you no. Not about touch, but about anything. Right? No doesn't mean that they are defying you. No doesn't mean that they don't want to be obedient. No is information. No is I don't want this right now. So then the parent's job, because we are the parent and the adult, is to investigate what's going on. And being very grateful. Thank you for saying no, because I didn't know that. And now I'd like to get to know you better and figure out what's behind that no. And let's find out what your yes is, right? So it's parents learning how to parent a little bit differently and not making assumptions. And again, it's challenging the parenting paradigm, like the ones where this is the parent and the parent knows everything and the child doesn't know anything, and we have to like get the kid to do the thing. So I think that's kind of like our struggle is we have to break some of that and begin listing requests, that being, well, if they say no, then what? Like I think parents, they don't know what to do with the no. And so they make sure the child only always says yes. But then now that child is being conditioned to when they become an adult, they only say yes. And they potentially could receive abusive touch or, they put themselves in situations that they can be harmed. So it begins at home. It begins at home where there's honest questions, there's honest yes and no's, and then eventually like, hey, can we cuddle on the couch? Let's watch our favorite movie, and can we spend time and just hold each other? So yeah,
This game is so important because it teaches you consent from a very young age. It will, I personally feel it would solve so many problems in the world. If people actually know how to ask for consent and how to take an answer positively, or, not being upset by a no, it will change many things which are happening around the world right now.
I agree. And let me just demonstrate for those that are watching and never heard of it. Basically what it looks like is, I would say, may I brush your hair? And then what would you say?
Yes.
And then I would go and brush your hair. And then you would then ask me either a may I or would you question. And if you'd like, you can try that.
Would you touch my arm?
Yes. And it can be so simple as that. And with children, I make it silly because kids like to laugh. And they, oh my goodness, it makes them laugh so much. I'll say, may I poke your belly button? Or may I pull your hair? Or may I punch you in the gut or in the stomach? And they're like, oh, no! They're like, no, I don't want you to punch me. And it's playful. and they love it because we can come up with some really silly things. And then they'll come up, can I put my finger in your nose? You're like, no, I don't want you to put your finger in my nose.
What would be your approach to establishing yourself as a cuddlist in India with diverse thought processes, and how would you reach out?
So first of all, I don't presume to know India at all. I'd like to go to India. So if you're inviting me, I love to go. It's one of the countries that I've been wanting to visit. And I definitely cannot come as an imperialist American, presuming to know what India needs, presuming to say, this is what's good for you. I would go and I would listen, and I would hear stories, and I would hear how touch is experienced there. It's different than here, I'm sure. I know that there was someone in your government, because I read an article that said that they wanted to ban public cuddling. They wanted to ban or make it illegal. And I read that, I'm like, okay, there must be a very small part of India. India is very big. But that because it's seen that it's sexual, or it can go to sexual things. So I know that there's a culture that's very, like, there's a lot of shame around sex, I'm assuming. I don't get it from what I perceive from over here. So I think the beginning would be to discuss the difference between like platonic touch and sexual touch, and I think in the whole world, we need to begin to make this divide. That, for example, a heterosexual man can receive touch from another heterosexual man, and it doesn't mean anything about their sexuality. It just means that they're human. Like, that's really important. And it's healthy and it's positive. So I think that conversation needs to be had globally. A lot of cultures, though, already have that. Men touch, women, like, everyone just touches, and it's very, very comfortable. Not everywhere. And so I think I would look into, how is that divide? Is it clear? Can people access platonic touch? If you, like, for example, if you would like touch, can you get it when you need it? Can you ask for it? Do you know who to go to? Yeah, like, those kinds of questions I would ask. And if people said, no, I want it and I don't know where to get it, and I don't know how to ask for it, there it is. Then let's start there.
What would you like to say to future cuddlists in India, and a little guidance for them as well? The person I called, my friend who I called before this interview, maybe, she was quite interested in this. She wanted to know more. She wanted to explore. So she just wants to know, what can she do and how can she do it?
So I guess the first thing I want to say is Cuddlist is a branded name. So it's not a word that can be used unless you are certified under the Cuddlist brand, right? Unless you've gone through the certification. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that only those who have been certified through Cuddlist can use the word Cuddlist. So you can say touch specialist or touch practitioner or cuddling practitioner, or however you want to put it. I use platonic touch specialist, or platonic touch cuddling specialist, and or my rehabilitative touch specialist, depending on what the work I'm doing. So your question is, how to start it in India?
How would you guide them? Because I see quite a few people would be interested. How would you reach out to them? How would you explain it to them? How would you help them out?
So
Are they really interested in doing this?
Ideally, I would go to India. So invite me. Please, I want to go to India. I've always wanted to go. Okay, I would go to India. And we would, what I would encourage everyone to do that wants to do this work is, you need to do it for yourself. Like, how are you about touch? How do you feel comfortable touching strangers? How are you about asking for what you need? Not only in touch, but in life. Let's say you are lonely one night and you're just at home and you would like to go hang out with your friends. Do you feel comfortable asking them, hey, let's go hang out? And they may tell you no. So in life, how are you about your own consent, asking for what you want and your own boundaries? And when someone asks you, hey, I want you to do this for me, can you say no? So I believe that every practitioner needs to have those personal boundaries, their personal yes and no. They need to know themselves very well. And so if I were there, I would, it would be important to create some kind of curriculum around, can you handle rejection? Can you handle asking for things that are very vulnerable? Can you become vulnerable? In the sessions, it is still difficult when I tell a client I'm uncomfortable with what we're doing. This doesn't feel okay for me anymore. And if you're not able to do that in your life with your friends and family, it may be really a lot more difficult to do it with the client. So I think we need to have the best boundaries, the best communication skills. And it has to be in our entire life, not just in our work. So those are the kind of practitioners that we're looking for. And then looking at the next step after communication is, what kind of touch are you okay with? And what kind of touch are you not okay with? And are you able to communicate with that with people that you care about? Like, can you tell them, I'm okay with this kind of touch and I'm not okay? And then once you've figured out your boundaries, then it's like how to have those conversations about your boundaries. So there's all of these steps that I think are really important before you just jump into the work. Lots of people just jump in and they learn along the way. But to become an effective healthcare touch practitioner, we need to have these skills built first.
What would you like to tell psychologists and counselors out there who are quite reluctant about touch specialists or people who offer touch services? What would you like to tell them?
Trust us. Well, trust those that you vetted. Vet us, actually. Get to know us. Let us get to know you. Let's collaborate. Let's figure out ways in which we can, again, make this client focused. If your client needs touch, your client is completely afraid of it or adverse to it or touch deprived and they don't know how to access it, it is unethical for you to not provide them resources in which they can get it in a safe way. And having a relationship is very difficult for them because that's a lot of other things that are involved in that, having a relationship. So just telling them to go dating or go find a girlfriend or boyfriend, like that's complicated. Also, if they're married, right, and in their marriage there isn't touch, that's extremely difficult for them to access it, and they may not go to other family and friends. So that's us. Get to know us. Send us one of your clients, right? Like, let us show you what we can do, and then from there, like building that trust and rapport. I want the therapists that I work with, I want them to trust me. I want them to believe that I'm a safe practitioner, that I'm communicating effectively with them. I think that's what needs to be built first. It's a relationship and learning to communicate even with them. So that's what I think we need, is building those relationships and trust.
That's wonderful. I had a great time talking to you about this.
Thank you so much for reaching out to me and sharing this with India or Mumbai or your school and your community. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, your school, what you're working on, letting people know kind of what this is all about?
I'm glad I did this with you. Loved it. Thank you for giving me some time and talking to me about all these things and answering all my questions. Thank you.
Well, would you be willing to tell us who you are, what school you're at, what you're working on, what this project is?
Sure. I actually got interested in this. I'm Radhika. Hi, I'm Radhika Sathe from Mumbai. I study in Joya College, which is an autonomous college. So we have a lot of scope for student research papers, credit courses, all the extra things you want to do, we're supported for that. So I'm just trying to explore new stuff, and maybe somewhere along the way I can use this and participate in some competitions and basically get used to new stuff. And hopefully I can understand more people, be sensitive towards topics and problems of other people, and not be judgmental about it, and learn more about what's happening out there. So just a curious mind doing, talking to people, researching stuff, reading about new things. That's really all.
And